walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?
Welcome to the Lou Holtz podcast. If you've heard this show before, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, liberal, conservative, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color you are. What is important is what we're trying to do is restore the culture of this country. What keeps a business going, a team going, is the culture of the country, and I feel we've lost that. We're very blessed today to have Matt Whitaker, an outstanding individual I have tremendous respect for. Matt Whitaker is from Des Moines, Iowa, and serves as co-chairman for the Center of Law and Justice at American First Policy Institute, acting Attorney General of the United States from 2018 to 2019. Mr. Whitaker served as Chief of Staff to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Mr. Whitaker was also managing partner of Des Moines-based law firm Whitaker Hagen Gustav LLP until rejoining the U.S. Department of Justice in 2017. Nobody was more popular in that state than Matt Whitaker. Matt, welcome here. Delighted to have you. What a great background you've had.
Well, it even sounded better you reading it. I think a lot of life, and I'm sure it's such an honor to be with you today, Coach. I was disappointed, I guess, that when you left the University of Minnesota to go win your national championships at Notre Dame, that you didn't recruit me. You recruited a former, I guess he was right before me, a guy named John Leverins from Ankeny, Iowa. John was about 3 years ahead of me in high school, just a stud athlete, probably better athlete than I was, so I understand why you recruited John.
Well, he was a good athlete.
Yeah. It's just an honor to be with you, my friend.
We recruited another athlete out of Iowa. He's now the team physician at the University of Notre Dame. He was the football player of the year, basketball player of the year, and baseball player of the year in Iowa. Wonderful young man. Can't say enough good things about him. But as we go into this, Matt, and then just feel free to elaborate on anything. But it's great to have you on the show. You're a football star in both high school and college. You're inducted into the Iowa High School Football Hall of Fame and played in the 1991 Rose Bowl.
Into the end zone. Touchdown, the Hawkeyes have run another one as Matt Whitaker, the tight end, slips in and takes it from Hartlieb, the holder. So Hayden Fry.
Tell me about that game and what you believe have contributed to your success.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having me on. You are an American legend. I mean, truly, really, lived the American dream, and I'm proud to know you. We spent some time together recently in Fort Worth. We did the prayer breakfast together. It was just a magical moment in my life, and so it's great to be on this show. The 91 Rose Bowl, we'd won the Big Ten that year. We'd actually had a four-way tie, but we won the tiebreakers. And it was just one of those sort of overcoming adversity at every turn. Washington was stacked. I think, they won the Rose Bowl that year against us. They won the national championship under Don James the next year, and they were on probation the next year. So it was kind of that type of program that they had out there. But they had just athletes, Napoleon Kaufman, Steve Entman, who I lined up on the first play of the game across from, who was a defensive tackle, and he blew me back 9 yards off the ball, but we got positive yardage, and I held the crap out of him.
Well, I want to tell you, Don James played at Kent State where I went, and our motto was, we can't read, we can't write, but we are Kent State. And then he went on. He was very successful in college, but he went to the Pac-10. But let me tell you something about it. he took the Big Ten mentality about the way they played football.
Yeah.
Toughness, hard, physical. Because before then, the Pac-10 was all push and shove and touch, but don't hit me real hard. They'd sign a non-aggression pact with you. But I'm guessing sports and your coaches taught you some great life lessons. Why do you think it's important for kids to play sports growing up?
Well, Coach, I mean, I'm a huge fan of sports. You know, I grew up playing every sport I possibly could. Loved to play golf in the summers because that's the only time you can play in Iowa. But played baseball, played basketball, ran track, played football, of course. I came from actually a baseball family. My brother and my dad both played college baseball. My dad is about my size, but his parents wouldn't let him play high school football. So when he was playing baseball, they described him as a Mack truck with Volkswagen wheels. So he wasn't very fleet of foot. Thankfully, my mom was very athletic as well and very fast. And I found that out as a youth because she chased me down many times as I was getting in trouble. But, I think, I think one of the things that sports teaches you is just, is teamwork, it's discipline, it's communication, it's, this idea of responsibility. You talk about that all the time when I have the great fortune to hear you speak just about personal accountability and responsibility and how you held your players to a very high account. One of the things I learned from playing sports was just time management. I graduated from undergraduate in 3.5 years, did all of my, MBA, law degree, and undergrad all in 7 years while playing football for most of that. And so time management was obviously an important skill. But the thing that endures, all the memories, as and all the teammates, but it's those friendships. It's those friendships, new and old. It's a friendship that, you and I, since we got involved in AFPI, we've become friends. And it's just, football is that bond. And so anytime I run into somebody that I played with, played against, or shared a college football lineage, it's just so great to talk about, our memories and how great that was to do as young men.
It really does. And people say, what's the difference between athletes today and 40 years ago? Today, everybody wants to talk about their rights and their privileges. 40 years ago, we talked about our obligation, our responsibility, and that was our teammates. Great players come and go, but great teammates last a lifetime. And a teammate is someone who genuinely cares about other people. And the more love and feeling you get on the football team, the better the team. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And the same thing with the country. You have to have a love of the people in it. You have to have a love of the country, and we're losing that a little bit. I'm guessing sports and your coaches taught you some great lessons. Why do you think it's important for kids to play sports today?
Yeah, in addition to all of the things I laid out earlier, and just all the great memories and the discipline and all those qualities that I learned from playing college sports and high school sports. I think the other thing that Coach Pizzetti at Ankeny High School and Coach Breka and Coach Rowetter, who were the assistant coaches, or whether it was Coach Fry and the legendary, also Hall of Fame coach Bill Snyder, Don Patterson, Dave Triplett, my position coach for most of the time I was there. All of those coaches, I think, instilled in me really a belief in a growth mindset, sort of this idea that you can improve. You're not, what you are today is not necessarily what you are tomorrow. Certainly they understood that, your identity is going to drive your behaviors instead of your behaviors driving your identity. We see that so many times now with kids these days. They do bad things, and then therefore they identify as being bad. And I saw that as some of my teammates, but I believed, we were Hawkeyes, and we knew what that standard was, and I'm sure you had it the same way for your Fighting Irish and all the Gophers and all the teams that you coached. That identity and what that stood for. But as I was thinking about this, Coach, I think the thing that was taught by all of those coaches is kind of you are what you repeatedly do. That your daily habits ultimately determine your destiny, and I think that was the thing that resonated for me really up into this day.
Well, I had a assistant coach, my defense coordinator at Notre Dame. came to me from Iowa, Barry Alvarez, who went on
yeah.
to become a legendary coach, a great guy. But I think so many people today get caught up with all this TikTok, etc. We had an hour, we met on the corner, we played football, whatever the sport was, we competed and we learned how to get
And we
along.
stayed out till dark and we played sports. You know, by the way, I do want to mention Barry Alvarez because he left right before I arrived as a freshman. You stole him away. The famous story is Coach Fry. You know, Barry went to Coach Fry and said, you know, Lou wants me to go be the defensive coordinator, or I'm going to interview with Lou, I think he said. And Coach Fry famously said, well, you better get the job because you're not coming back. And I thought that was quite a statement. But, you know, Barry obviously went on to do great things, both at Notre Dame and then Wisconsin. And then he hired my former teammate, Brett Bielema, who's now the coach at Illinois. And it's quite a coaching tree that you and Coach Fry share, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, I was at Ohio State as an assistant coach. And we played Iowa. And you had a guy by the name of Sullivan who was a fullback, was a great player. But in any event, when I'm at Ohio State, we opened up with SMU, coached by Hayden Fry.
Yeah.
They had a receiver by the name of, slipped my mind now. But
It was a few years ago, Coach. I totally understand.
Oh, I tell you, he could turn out the light and get in bed before it got dark. I mean, he was unbelievable, but we're fortunate enough to beat him. But as you played football through high school and college, you had a lot of coaches and people who spoke into your life. What was the one piece of advice you were given on the field that you've taken with you throughout life?
Well, in addition to what I said, you know, sort of about the daily habits and you are what you repeatedly do, oftentimes it was get up. You know, I spent too much time, you know, sort of, you know, on the ground. But, you know, it was, in all seriousness, I don't think I would be the man I am today if it wasn't for those coaches I mentioned, you know, especially Coach Pizzetti and Coach Fry, you know, my high school and my college coach. You know, growing up, you know, it was just this idea that anything was possible. And I know we're going to talk about it later, but I just think that sort of when you're presented, you know, when you're given a college scholarship, you know, and I'm sure you saw this with some of the kids you recruited. Some of it, that's the end. That was the goal. That was what they wanted to do. And some just wanted to see how they could be their best and how they could compete every day. And I'm sure it was disappointing when those folks showed up and really didn't put the effort in. But, you know, I was one of those. I was a lunch pail guy and I always wanted to be a lunch pail guy that showed up to every practice, every workout with an attitude that I could improve and get better. And, you know, I mean, I was limited just mostly by my physicality. You know, I was never going to run faster than about a 4.8 40. So, you know, I could be nasty and tenacious. I like to say, Coach, and I'll see if you agree with me on this, that, you know, when I was coaching 9 years of youth football, trying to be the Des Moines version of Lou Holtz in, you know, fifth grade football, I would tell parents when they came to me, you know, kind of, is my kid going to be a good football player? I'd be like, you know what? Until they hit, you know, puberty, you don't know. But one of the things I do know is if they're big or they're fast or they're nasty, one of those combinations, they should be a pretty good football player. Because I saw all different kinds of guys, but they had one of those features. If they have all three, then you got something special.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I tried to teach our players, and the one thing, if there's one thing I hammered, was life is a matter of choices. Wherever you are, good or bad, because choices you make. Choose to do drugs, drop out of school, join a gang, get tattoos from all over, get arrested. You're choosing to have difficulty in life, and stop blaming me for the choices you make. But we don't hold people accountable for the choices, and we don't teach them how to make good choices. Then we wonder why in the world we have so many problems today. My show is about pursuing the American dream and taking personal responsibility for your life. And you took this quite literally and served our country at several levels of government. As a young man, what turned your attention to the government and politics? What made you decide to engage?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an interesting question. We had the Iowa caucuses my senior year of high school, and they offered extra credit to go to them in government. And so I went to an Iowa caucus, and I got elected to be a delegate to the county convention. And so I think that was the initial thing that bit me from I was interested in the process. I didn't do anything really in college. I was appointed in law school to the board and control of athletics at the University of Iowa, which was a interesting experience to say the least, where they, I voted against it, but they voted to ban Chief Alinowick from Kinnick Stadium. So I voted against that, but unfortunately I was outvoted by the rest of the board. But looking back, it wasn't really until I was a young lawyer and decided that, I was interested in politics. I kind of investigated how to be involved and was elected then as a delegate to in 2000 in Bush. And so that's when I reactivated delegate to the county district and state convention, actually. And then they tried to recruit me to run for the state house, and ultimately I decided to run for statewide office in Iowa. And so it was, and then the rest is history, right? I mean, it was, you look at people throughout history, I don't think they think of it as a linear situation, but looking back, it all makes sense now, Lou.
Yeah. The linebacker I was trying to think of from Iowa was Tim Radigan, who is the team physician now. And the receiver from SMU was Jerry Levias, who was unbelievable. But in any event.
Well, and Jerry Levias was the first African-American in the Southwest Conference for Coach Fry, and he integrated the Southwest Conference. And in fact, Coach Fry tells the story of how after he did that, there was a lot of people that were against him for doing that. And so he carried a gun in his sock, essentially, when he was on the field. And one time it fell out. I can't tell the story like Caden Fry could, but it was quite a story. But yeah, Jerry was amazing.
Oh, he was that. Now, your first position, as I understand it, is your appointment as the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Iowa. You issued 500 indictments and went after corporate and government fraud. I tell you, you've been a fighter from the very beginning. Can you tell us about these times and what was your motivation to do this, and how much opposition did you encounter?
Yeah, being a federal prosecutor and running one of the U.S. Attorney's offices as the presidentially appointed U.S. Attorney is a very important role. I was the youngest U.S. Attorney in the country when I was appointed, whose father wasn't a U.S. Senator, because Strom Thurmond Jr. was the U.S. Attorney at the time down in South Carolina. But, as a 34-year-old, I had to prove myself every day. A lot of it was just building those relationships. I'm sure, for you, when you were head coach, you built those relationships with your coaching staff and with your players and with your support staff. I had to do the same thing as a U.S. attorney. And, I did it by kind of what I called management by walking around, just, checking in on people, seeing them, talking to them, interacting with them, kind of things, really probably I watched all my coaches do and didn't realize kind of what they were doing at the time. Coach Fry, if the team was really tight, like it was like the week leading up to Michigan, for example, he'd walk around and pour ice water down your back just to kind of loosen it up and try to get it from being so tight. But coaches are prone sometimes to getting a little nervous before the games. I remember one time, Coach Fry, we were working on our punt coverage. I was a guard on the spread punt coverage, and he decided I wasn't rocking and ripping right, so he gets down in there. I mean, at this time, he probably was, in his 60s and in his coach's shorts, and he was rocking and ripping and showing me what to do and having guys run through the line and just jacking him. It was it was fun, but I learned the lesson.
Well, coaching is just like being a parent. You have to do whatever you have to do to get the message across to people, because the message you give them is so important to their future years. Your first position, I understand, was, as I mentioned, attorney for the Southern District of Iowa.
Yep.
You're the acting general of the United States from 2018 to 2018. That's quite an accomplishment. What are you most proud of from the time you served there?
Well, so, Coach, it was a very tumultuous time in the Department of Justice. We had the Mueller investigation going on. Jeff Sessions had just resigned, and there was just it was a very hot seat and a very consequential time in American history. And I'm proud that I steadied the ship, that took command, and for the time that President Trump entrusted me with that role, I think we did the right thing for the right reason, and we really emphasized the rule of law. And I'm very proud of that. Obviously, there are 140,000 people at the Department of Justice that do the important work on behalf of the American people. It's unfortunate what's kind of been going on, recently with some of this weaponization and the FBI and all the controversies. But at the same time, I was very proud to, sort of take that command and really lead and led from the front. I was unafraid to lead from the front and to, take all the arrows and take all the slings and just fight through it every single day because, the media is tough, I think they've somehow lost their way on the, kind of holding people in government accountable without trying to tear them down and ruin their lives. I think there's, I was in the middle of just all of that, but I was very proud of, kind of staying calm and soldiering on.
Well, with the weaponization of the Justice Department, will we get that back? Will we go back to where we were, where Lady Justice was blind? Because it hadn't been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, Coach, I think we really need to focus on having the people that investigate cases. Quit getting leadership, whether at the FBI or at the Department of Justice, involved in the investigations and trying to run the investigations. You saw that all the way going back to the Mueller investigation, to the Hillary Clinton email server. Really, every controversy that's been screwed up by the Department of Justice or the FBI has been because leadership or somebody that shouldn't have been was stuck their nose into a case and tried to drive or steer it one way. Hunter Biden's another example of that case, was screwed up because Main Justice. And now, with these cases against Donald Trump, I think a lot of that has to do with the Biden White House and the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland putting their thumb on the scale of justice and really trying to drive that and not sticking with the tried and true policies and procedures and the way we do justice in the United States of America. And that's what we need to get back to.
I agree with you completely. As a football coach, the one thing I tried to get across to our players was understand your sense of purpose. What do we try to do? You go to class, you're trying to get an education. You go out on the football field, you're trying to get better in order that we can win. Too many times we lose sight of what our purpose is, and we end up going in different directions, and that's what really bothers me. I want to write a book, if I still can, titled Privileges I've Lost in the Last 80 Years. I'm 87 now, and, it's really amazing. What made this country great was you were entitled to have freedom, but you had to live according to the decisions you make. There are ramifications from things you do, and people want to make decisions and somebody else have the results of the ramifications of the choice they make. And that's just not the way it meant. Now, you served as Attorney General under President Donald J. Trump. What was that like? Can you share your favorite memory from working with him?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of memories. It was a very memorable moment in time. And I think, a couple memories that just jump out. One was when I asked him to speak at the Project Safe Neighborhoods Conference in Kansas City. And he said yes. And there was, 2,000 plus police officers and prosecutors and the like in the room. And, he was amazing.
We will not tolerate attacks on the heroes who protect our streets and defend our communities.
Trump talked about the crime problem in America. Cities like ours have seen murder rates that have been consistently high. The president says under his leadership, America is safer.
In the 2 years before I took office, the violent crime rate increased by 7%, and murders were up by over 20%. But we're turning it around very quickly, much quicker than anyone thought possible.
That was one memory. I mean, there's just so many memories. I remember right before I was done, I testified in front of the House Judiciary Committee, and it was, it was where I famously told the chairman, Jerry Nadler, that his 5 minutes were up.
Mr. Chairman, I see that your 5 minutes is up, and so I'm here voluntarily. We have agreed to 5-minute rounds, and
the committee.
I think that's a fine place to end the 5-minute rule.
The committee.
And I think it really set the tone for the second half of the Trump administration. And he called me up the next day, and he just was like, that was amazing. He goes, "How does it feel to be a rock star?" I was like, "I'm not a rock star. I'm just
yes, you are. You are a rock star.
Thank you. I'm going to clip that from you, Coach, and keep that for the rest of my life, because that's thank you.
I mean it. I mean it sincerely. How has your faith? I know you have a strong faith. How has your faith played in your success as an athlete and as a professor or professional lawyer?
Yeah.
How's your faith entered into that?
Yeah, my faith is the most important thing in my life. I don't talk about it publicly because I don't want to be sort of hold myself out to be sort of better or special or otherwise. I mean, I'm like people, Bible-believing Christians like myself. I know I'm a sinner. I know I need Jesus as my Savior. I'm so thankful and grateful for His sacrifice on the cross, and but it informs me every day. I do. As often as I can, which ends up being almost every day. I talk about what you repeatedly do, your kind of your daily habits. And I do a daily devotional for men that grounds me every morning in the Word, in the Bible. And I think that, that's a very important piece of my life. I'm very, I pray continuously and ceaselessly. I pray for everything, whether that's, friends that are afflicted by, misfortune or disease or whatever happens in people's lives. I pray for individuals and people, and again, I'm not perfect. In fact, I'm far from perfect, Coach. But
we're all that way. As I say, I have a strong faith in God, but I don't preach it, I don't lecture it, but I hope the way I live my life reflects the faith I have in God. And here's what I've never been able to understand, man. How people get by without a faith in God. Now, when you have a faith in God, doesn't mean you aren't going to have problems. You'll probably have more. But your faith enables you to solve them and handle them peacefully.
Yeah, and it also allows you to let go of things and understand that God's in charge. And sometimes, things that are out of your control, only God can solve these problems or heal or whatever is necessary. And so it allows you to not worry, and not, when you go to bed at night, not worry about whether you wake up in the morning, quite frankly, and knowing that as a person of faith, that God has promised certain things in His Word, and I believe those.
I do too. It's really amazing. As somebody told me in grade school, that God will never send more your way than you can handle. Yeah. But so many times I've looked up at heaven and said, God, I think You've overestimated my talents and my abilities, but it's having that faith that enables you to stay calm and peaceful. Why do you think we have such a division in this country, Matt?
Well, I think it's for a couple reasons. One is the issues that this country faces are large, and some appear to be, for at least our elected officials, unsolvable. And so I think it's better to just have a partisan food fight, Lou, than it is to actually solve these tough challenges. I think the other thing if we're being honest, is I think the era of career politicians where people have done nothing other than be elected to office, where they haven't been head football coaches, like Coach Tuberville, where they haven't been even school teachers or people in the private economy or entrepreneurs. We have a lot of people that have really just all they've ever done is be elected. And I think that's very concerning. And it's our founding fathers intended for it to be inconvenient to serve, that people would go to their capital, whether that's in their state or their nation or the city hall. They would serve for a limited time, and then they would go live under the laws that they passed. And I just think we've moved away from that ideal. And I also think, again, there's a lot of people making a lot of money dividing us based on, sort of our beliefs, our skin color, and all the types of things that our founding fathers would have been totally opposed to. And I think that's just an absolute shame.
I agree with you. When I was growing up, we were Democrats. I remember in '52 when Eisenhower won the election. Don't ask me how I remember this. This was 75 years ago. Everybody said, the election's over, the results are known, the will of the people has nearly been shown. We'll get together, show by our deeds. We'll give old Ike the backing he needs. We'll get together, let differences pass. I'll hug your elephant, you can kiss my ass. That's just how I remember it. But the Democratic Party today is not the Democratic Party that my parents belonged to. And we've moved more towards socialism and things like that. But be that as it may, as we wrap up, the theme of my show is Coaching America Back to Greatness. What do you believe we need to do to restore the culture of this country? Because we've lost it. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Well, I think it starts with family, and I know you're, believe in this as well. But until we have kind of more, sort of nuclear families, moms, dads, children raised up in that loving family, I think we got to get back to that as the core, the nucleus, the most important, sort of body within community. I think, again, faith is so important. We need more believers, more churchgoers, people that are, again, live by creeds and their faith. I think that we also, to be honest with you, we need more statesmen and stateswomen, more people that are willing to lose elections to stand on principle and to solve problems than to play, the partisan politics and kick the can down the road. We need folks that are willing to lead, to step up, and to actually make the tough choices and take the tough votes. Those are probably the things. But then, really, as John Adams said, this constitutional system is only appropriate for a, moral and upright people. And I really do believe that we need people that are willing to, have self-discipline and self-control. Again, I'm not holding myself out as perfect, Coach. I just, if you talk to Coach Fry, I'm sure I screwed up a couple times and had to, run a few extra lines. But, all saying that, I think we need people that are willing to, live with discipline and self-control. In
1988, Time magazine came to me and said, we want you to write an article on what this country will be like in 2020. So I wrote that, and it's evident today, and I have a copy of it out in the hall. The big thing I said was the breakup of the family. I think the worst thing that happened was Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, where all of a sudden the family's not important. You don't need a father there. We're going to pay you to do all this. That's nonsense. A family. And the minorities in our city were great people. I mean, the Bell, the Pack, the Spencer, Dorsey, those families were great. But they all had two parents in the home. They all had disciplined children. And I love them as like my brother. They're just was great. But we have lost the family. Yeah. And we get to the point where that's why we have so many gangs today. Because people want to be part of something, and they can't be part of a family, so the gang becomes their family, and that's where we go downhill. But I just can't thank you enough, man. I have so much respect for you and the way you've done things and your accomplishments, and I really feel good about the future of this country, particularly of America's First Policy Institute, because of people like you and the leadership. So, and you're like when you speak, everybody listens. So I sure listen to you. But thank you for being with us. God bless you, man, and continue health and continued success in changing this culture of this country. Thank you for being with me.
It's been an honor of a lifetime to be with you today. Thank you so much for spending some time. I just am going to cherish this forever. So thank you.
You humble me. I tell you what, my wife of 59 years died 4 years ago. It's a good thing she is with me, or I'd gone and bragged. You ought to have heard what Matt Whitaker said about me, honey. But thank you for being with us. God bless.
Good to see you, my friend.
And he walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
See, there's a rule in life that you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?